For those of you who have been fans of the channel for a bit, you would know that cosmic analog horror is especially a favorite, and it has now been a whole year since we discovered the existence of AZ-001, and little did we know the absolute insanity that would come from what was thought to be a simple rock. That's right, folks, it's that time to get back into the cosmic nightmare of Midwest Angelica, where an unexplainable cosmic entity began to take over the nation and infect anyone who came into contact, creating a disturbing hive mind, in more ways than one. In the first video we did, we covered all of Act 1, Interlude A, and the first two entries of Act 2, so if you're completely unaware of whatever it is I am talking about at the moment, it's probably best to catch yourself up. But first, as always, if you haven't already, you have to check out the original series for yourself, as any recap or explanation video will never be able to provide the full experience of the true horrors that exist in the skies above, the ultimate unexplainable nightmare. Last we left off, Operation Homebound had commenced, or so we thought. It was meant to be the destruction of all assimilated areas in an attempt to destroy Starkill, the entity in its ultimate state after we made the genius idea to inject it into Dr. Robert Spencer. We were just trying to make super soldiers and give one guy mental control over all of them, and as to be expected, it didn't go well. We just made Starkill stronger, and it gave itself the new identity, Admiral Nero. In fact, the whole operation ended up being fake, a fabricated event to fool everyone that there was nothing to worry about. Thankfully, we have our character Dr. Gamma Churchill who plans to bring an end to this nightmare. Will he succeed? Well, all we can do is hope, as AZ-001 split off a beta chunk that also headed straight for us. And in a news report from Kansas City, said chunk can be seen floating in the sky off in the distance. Just like the first video, this is an adventure I knew I couldn't run solo. So as to be expected, Mr. Minus will also be joining us in this cosmic journey. But enough yapping, let's put on our protective suits to prevent infection. I hope these work. And let's pull out our doctorates. You have those, right? And let's see what new and disturbing events have taken place in the analog cosmic horror that is Midwest Angelica.
But before I let you get too far, there's another piece of gear I forgot to mention that will certainly assist in blocking out the horrors that await us. And that is the sponsor of today's video, Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep provides these high-quality sleep masks to fit your resting needs in every situation. And if you're like me, who lives where the sun is your worst enemy, and you like napping in the middle of the day, this mask is perfect for you. These masks come with adjustable eye cups to alleviate pressure and to ensure that no light is making its way through. 100% blackout. I know someone who could really use this. The gang over at Manta Sleep were kind enough to send me over the Manta Sound Mask, which comes with these Bluetooth headphones on the side. No need for barbaric methods of listening to your podcasts, background noise, or even music when it's time for bed. And the battery life is over 20 hours, so unless you sleep for that long, this will last you the whole night. But if that's not important to you, there's plenty of other options like the weighted mask, steam mask, cool mask, and the unbeatable original, the Manta Sleep Mask. Like I said before, I toss and turn like a crazy person all throughout the night, and the fact that this mask does not fall off is truly mind-boggling. And be sure to use the code 4PLUS at checkout to get 10% off your order. Once again, a huge thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring today's video. But anyways, now you can pass through.
Paradise. We open up and are introduced to Marcus Lucan, an investigative journalist from Kansas City, Missouri. We are also dated on June 2nd, 1999. A whole month after Dr. Robert Spencer was injected with Starkill, creating the aforementioned Admiral Nero. We have some catching up to do. Marcus claims that on May 29th, he saw something unexplainable on a local TV station, and is now heading to Paradise, Missouri to see if he can get any answers. Sounds like he was the viewer of the pause tape weather report we saw in the last entry. After a bit of driving footage, Marcus parks to have a look around. He makes mention that not a lot seems to be going on nearby, but he also states that he is trying to find the lake he saw in the broadcast, essentially confirming that he was a witness to that weather report. We find ourselves in a neighborhood, and then lo and behold, the lake has been found. Marcus again mentions that the surrounding area is suspiciously quiet, and he hasn't seen a single other person. However, once we turn, we see a very familiar object in the sky.
I haven't seen anyone yet, but
from the looks of it, it appears to be dumping something out, and hopefully this isn't like Nope. Marcus looks around, and then in an instant, the object is gone, and Marcus declares that for some odd reason, he needs to get a closer look.
Marcus, trying to recapture his childhood, hangs around a playground before he sees some odd biomass growing. Looks like these guys need OxyClean.
It's amazing!
He seems quite confused before we cut to Marcus sitting in front of a lake. The water, however, looks Christmas-themed as it's green and red. Marcus thinks that whatever this is has gotten into the water supply. As a result, he starts walking back to the car in confusion. He notes that this place is eerily quiet while staring into a building. Suddenly, he sees something moving around, which startles him and prompts him to give us Cloverfield footage. See, this is why you never invade the privacy of your neighbors. You never know what freaky stuff they're into. Marcus drives off and concludes for his safety he cannot stay in this town tonight. Therefore, he finds a hotel outside the town. Perhaps he's a smarty pants after all.
We are taken inside the hotel, and Marcus claims something is very odd about the sink. And once he turns it on, yeah, I think I would check out almost immediately.
You know, we didn't even stay there, though.
Yeah, we fucking booked it.
It looks like blood, but it most certainly is the same substance that we saw coated all over the lake. And this isn't the first time we have seen the water supply become a source of infection, as it was theorized that way back in Act 1, Dr. Evans infected Ray O'Connor after tampering with his cup of water. Marcus decides to set up his camera to film himself while he sleeps, and we are brought to midnight, watching over sleepy Marcus. Everything appears normal at first, until the door swings open, and we are visited by a figure we have yet to see before. Whatever that thing was, I would hope upon rewatch of the tape that Marcus finds something new to investigate for his own safety. We end up seeing some more footage a couple hours later while Marcus still sleeps, except we don't get any visitors, thankfully.
We cut to Marcus contemplating in the bathroom, ideal location, before he claims that he's going to get lunch. That said, however, he talks about a weird dream he had last night, but can't remember all of it. He woke up feeling brave and courageous though, so I guess it worked. Probably because he hasn't reviewed the tapes yet. After eating a $5 footlong, Marcus forecasts that it's gonna rain.
It's raining sideways!
But explains he might be hallucinating during all of this. Of course, he is unsure. We cut to footage of Marcus walking along before we see a giant creature off in the distance. So that's where the 17th Colossus went. He zooms in on it a bit before we cut to footage of Marcus out in the woods, saying he needs to go back to the lake.
Sure enough, we are back in our car, heading back to paradise, back to the lake. We cut to later in the night as we head further on foot, and again, we see that chunk floating in the sky. It seems to be able to appear and disappear in a flash. We keep cutting ahead, looking out into the forest, continuing to check the skies for any unidentified objects. After a bit more walking around, our camera begins to glitch out a bit, before our familiar glowing humanoid figure once again appears. Marcus claims that he was only able to view it from the camera, undetectable to the naked eye. He carries on further, and we see this glow coming from the ground, and Marcus claims that it has been calling for him.
Marcus is now down in a hole, feeling so small. And I've said this before in many videos, but it looks like that dreaded Cortana level in Halo 3. What can I say? Some trauma never heals. Marcus walks around even more confused and frightened now. The hole is pulsating and squishing about as he concludes he is now under the lake. He zooms into the distance to see presumably this level's final boss. Now we are faced with Mute from Rainbow Six Siege, as the footage whispers help before our video ends. So let's dive a little deeper into this. We haven't been introduced to Marcus until now, so we don't know much about him as a person, but we could probably get some information by looking to history again. If you're not familiar with the series, it is notorious for its usage of historical names and mirroring it to some degree. Marcus Lucan was alive in ancient Rome and was born to a wealthy family. He studied rhetoric and was mentored by his uncle. He was quite decorated for his works as he won many awards and was even appointed to official positions by their emperor, one being their version of an oracle. The emperor in question was Emperor Nero. Nero and Marcus were great friends once upon a time, but then things changed. It's unclear what caused it, as some claim Nero was stricken with jealousy and began sabotaging his career, which prompted Marcus to write hit pieces on him. Another account claims that Marcus shot first and began criticizing Nero with his work. In particular, he was critical of the Great Fire of Rome and seemingly accused him of starting it. His later work, oh boy, what the fuck is this thing called? Think that's Pharsalia. Yeah, we're gonna call it Pharsalia. His later works like Pharsalia were critical of the Roman Empire and demanded a return to the Roman Republic. Eventually, Marcus would join in with Gaius Calpurnius Piso, and if you watched our last video, you'd know Piso was a Roman noble who was conspiring to defeat Nero. Piso was also the name Dr. Churchill used as his codename in his fight against Admiral Nero. That said, the conspiracy would end up being discovered. While on trial, Marcus incriminated his mother in hopes for mercy, but it was all meaningless. It's unclear if Nero had him executed or if he committed suicide, but what is known is that he died reciting a poem of a soldier who died a similar death to his. If the story is to be relevant, Marcus may have a dire fate awaiting him, but for now, it's very likely that the R6 operator he ran into at the end was indeed Dr. Churchill. If that's the case, we are now in the part of the story where Pizzo and Marcus team up to defeat Nero. Will history repeat itself? Only one way to find out.
Terminated. Our tape opens up, and we read that it is assumed Lucan recorded the following local station broadcasts the night of June 2nd, while he was staying at the motel outside Paradise. And we learn that the tapes were received from the Pentagon, alongside camcorder footage recorded by Lucan on June 2nd and 3rd, likely the footage we saw in the Paradise tape. We are then played the mentioned recorded broadcasts. We flip through a handful of channels until we hold on channel 3, just going through the weather report, until the sound cuts out and we read that a civil authority has issued a water boil advisory for Clay County, effective until further notice. But then we cut to channel 6, and a live news report has discovered the same large object that Lucan had for a brief moment in the last tape, until our broadcast is said to have been terminated. It sounds like someone/something definitely did not want this getting out to the public. A distorted voice then appears claiming that for our security, the broadcast has been terminated, and any information that had been shown on said broadcast is now classified. Well, what do we do about all the people who may have seen it? You know what? Don't tell me. I didn't see anything. Our footage then distorts like crazy, before we cut to our next bit of text informing us that it is assumed the Starkill-controlled Home Delta Division was responsible for the hijacking of Channel 6. We read that all information about the beta chunk was successfully kept secret by Starkill. It can't let its hidden trick up its sleeve be known by anyone. Little did it expect Marcus Lucan to be so curious about the floating object he saw in the news. The last thing we read in this tape is that the implications of this fact are unsettling. It definitely isn't good that Starkill has gotten to the point where so much information is able to be hidden from humanity as a whole. At least the fact an attempt is being made, that is.
Apostles. Apostles opens up with footage that was found in Lucan's car on June 5th, 1999, 6 months before the release of. His car was found in the Pentagon's south parking lot and was eventually towed off for inspection. The video was supposedly recorded by Dr. Churchill. The footage shows a voice box talking, claiming there was an incident at an event where a death row inmate was killed and that Dr. Robert Spencer is now cured of his Starkill infection. The aforementioned event was covered in our last video, where a man went onto the stand and spoke directly to Nero, claiming he was playing his game, before he was shot and killed in front of everyone. Dr. Churchill is accused of trying to sabotage Home Delta operations and is currently MIA, with orders being to kill on sight. We see a pair of hands come onto screen as we hear someone claim this is all a cover-up. We see what looks to be Dr. Churchill talking to us, and he claims his buddy, codenamed Fakebringer, hasn't spoken to him in a week. How sad. This likely means he has been discovered, but Dr. Churchill isn't too surprised. He feels guilty for sacrificing people for his crusade to humanity. Now alone, he is faced with one choice, even if it'll kill him. He claims AZ-001's consciousness has landed, but it is only known to a few people. He will use the Akashic probe to extract memories from the being and utilize it with the US to wipe the Starkill out. That said, the area it may be located in is quite vast. He is not deterred, however, as he claims this is the final stand.
We are dated on April 21st, 1999, and we end up following Dr. Churchill as he begins to head to the Coliseum site to assess the full situation and hopes to see if he can find out where the beta chunk is located, knowing it wants to remain hidden as it continues to grow. We cut ahead and watch as Dr. Churchill makes his way until he arrives at the Coliseum site. We see what looks like this weird plant-looking structure, and Dr. Churchill believes it to be some Akashic node communicating with the beta chunk, and he says that it appears to be able to scatter the signal, making it to where triangulation of the source is rather difficult. Following this, however, Dr. Churchill ends up getting his own visit from our glowing apparition.
After meeting the Star Child from Mass Effect, Dr. Churchill looks to be hooked up to all these wires, kind of like Neo from the Matrix. A robotic voice reads his vitals out before we cut to a blue path on a map cutting through the home of the worst NFL team ever, and then through the surrounding area. We are now seeing more footage of the countryside as the doctor tells us he has been searching for months across multiple states for the location of AZ-001, but he has had little success. That is until he sees a billboard that has hell painted over in red. How poetic. Our hero is now headed to Paradise, Missouri. Sounds horrid. Speculating this is the best lead he has.
Dr. Churchill finds himself at the lake, equipped with a spore reader to locate the chunk. He wanders near the lake for a bit, questioning how the infection is spreading. He then gets closer to the water, and our reader begins to go off. And then it clicks that the infection is spreading through the water. Dr. Churchill begins to dig into the ground, and he finds the network running under Paradise. He knows what must be done, and we quickly find ourselves back inside the nasty underground chasm. Dr. Churchill looks in awe of the horrific cave system, stating that this chasm is of temple classification, and that it's using the lake as a cooling vent instead of the mushroom-like structures that infects through the air.
After deciding it's time to go spelunking and jumping in, we see that there's a rave going on in the cave as he pulls out the probe. Voices can be heard as the screen goes white. A voice tells Dr. Churchill that much like the stories told long ago, his sacrifice will not be lost, that the voice will complete the mission for him. Dr. Churchill asks who this is as the Star Child returns, claiming that they already know. They say they are an unbound soul, the unconscious within, eternal and cyclical. Sadly, they say Churchill's story will end here, despite it being narrative perfection. I see what you did there, Mr. Writer. That said, the voice claims that their sacrifice will bring hope to humanity. A loud noise is heard before we cut to black.
We see that it's now been a couple days that Churchill has been inside the temple, and a voice can be heard just repeating the word Easter before our footage cuts out, signifying the end of this tape. We then learn the unfortunate news that Dr. Churchill had succumbed to the Starkill infection as his mind was flooded with the Akashic Eternal Consciousness. Damn it, Churchill. You were supposed to be the one. However, next, we are met with more footage from a tape found outside the Pentagon at the Arlington National Cemetery, recorded by none other than Marcus Lucan on June 3rd. We watch as Lucan is handed the Akashic probe from Churchill, who tells him to take it to the Pentagon. When asked who he is, all Churchill tells him is that he is CIA, and that the probe is for all of humanity. He also tells him to take the camera before it appears Churchill becomes unresponsive. Hopefully he was successful in gathering all the memories and knowledge from that core consciousness, but now it's in Lucan's hands.
Marcus runs through the woods in fear and confusion before getting to his car. Driving down the lonely road, he claims his next stop on the tour is the Pentagon, where he's going to get his answers. It'll be a 16-hour drive and he's only stopping to sleep, probably because he doesn't need a piss after that experience. Time goes by and we hear Marcus is coughing a bunch. The coughing starts to get out of control as he leaves his car. We see footage of Marcus in a field before he mutates and the video ends. His body hasn't been found, but the US government is now aware of what's going on. Due to this, they formed a new division of Home, claiming the Gospel of Truth has been revealed. We see a new red pyramid logo appear, called Home Gamma Majestic, which ends our video. So it seems as though the earlier discussion we had about the history of Marcus Lucan's name was indeed foreshadowing of the real events, seeing as how both he and Piso perished in their attempt at stopping Admiral Nero. History repeats itself, but if that is the case, would looking to it maybe provide answers as to how to defeat Nero? Well, let's take a look. If you haven't seen our last Midwest Angelica video, first of all, shame. Secondly, in short, we explained that in history, Emperor Nero was quite the controversial leader. His reign started to fall apart after the death of his mother and the Great Fire of Rome, which was and still is speculated to have been orchestrated by him, and then blamed on Christians. This was his group of choice to suppress, as he was a dictator after all. Once this happened, the real-life Piso attempted to usurp the emperor, but of course was unsuccessful. Nero met his end when he enacted the greatest threat to the free world: higher taxes. This in turn caused some leaders in the Roman Empire to start a rebellion. Nero sent soldiers to handle the situation, and despite it being a win, his own soldiers began to swear loyalty to their general as opposed to him. This notion only grew as time went on as more leaders began defecting, with great support from the Roman populace. This culminated in Nero fleeing Rome after his own guards began to disobey his orders. While fleeing, Nero was in a panic and couldn't decide if he wanted to go into hiding or try to plead with his opposition for mercy. The emperor returned to Rome eventually and slept in the palace until he woke up at midnight to find it completely empty. In another panic, the emperor left yet again and stayed in a villa with 3 of his last loyal friends and a child named Sporus. Google him at your own risk. Nero ordered his men to dig his grave as he was informed that he was declared a public enemy by the Senate. Eventually, Nero was going to commit suicide, but he backed out and begged his men to kill him instead. The Senate soldiers arrived to find Nero bleeding out, and despite their efforts, Nero died, saying, "Too late. This is fidelity." After his death, a power vacuum was left in Rome. If history is to be our guide, then Nero's death is approaching, as we've just witnessed the failure of the Piso conspiracy. But by whose hand will he fall to? The US government is now aware of his danger, with a new organization being made to handle him, so perhaps this will be our salvation. But how it will happen, only time will tell. Nero's death was marked with overwhelming resistance from his own empire. Perhaps Admiral Nero will suffer the same fate.
Gospel. We open up, and it appears we are going to be going through the information that was recovered from the Akashic probe, in a way our feeble human minds can comprehend. We load in and are brought to this home screen. The first tab we hit is Classifications. and are shown the altars, which are said to be the smallest of the Starkill biomass collection, capable of commanding and producing two types of entities. The first is a phantom, which is said to appear nearly indistinguishable from humans at first, but have the capability to transform into wretches, leading us to our next entity, wretches, which are said to be humanoid Starkill entities that can be produced from altar biomass or from converted phantoms, which is likely the unfortunate fate Marcus was met with as seen in the last entry. We are then met with the second structure type, temples, which are said to be a much larger concentration of Starkill biomass, with the biomass extending deep underground. Essentially, what was under the lake, except this time without its mushroom-like structures. Our next structure entity is known as a wraith, said to be able to take different shapes depending on the nature of the temple, and they can grow to be 200 feet tall. Next up is a revenant, which can excrete. This is a very simple word that I don't know how to pronounce what's going on.
It's really funny. You can sit there and say stuff like revenant, but excrete, you're like, what the fuck?
Which can excrete spores from their bodies and are able to float using natural helium reserves. Sounds like our objects we have been frequently seeing in the skies. Our next page shows us some unlisted objects, with the code names Overture and Titan. I don't know if I want to see what a Titan looks like. We return to our home screen and head on over to biological memory. We end up heading into the unknown section and are met with quite the interesting looking footage not even the computer system is able to make out. Our system seems to begin to fail as the memory recall is unstable, and once back to the home screen, we try to check out the unknown data, and I hope you don't expect either of us to be able to decode all this nonsense. However, we learn that the contents of the Akashic probe were able to reveal Starkill's secret operations, and we learn that Home Delta is completely assimilated and now under the control of a hyper-intelligent biomass hivemind. Also, that the Starkill infection and biomass collectively refers itself as Azazel, a name associated with a fallen angel in the extra-biblical book of Enoch. Now would you look at that? It said that much of the contents of the Akashic probe appear to be indecipherable or encrypted in a way impossible for even the most powerful computers to crack. Yeah, it definitely looked like it. But it said that enough information was recovered for Home Gamma Majestic to begin devising countermeasures against the Starkill, and we saw how well this went last time. Hopefully this time it'll work. To end off this tape, we are shown what looks to be some big machine, with the word Dawnstar in the lower left, and text that just says One Nation Under God. So as of this moment, AZ-001 shot down the beta chunk into a lake in Paradise, Missouri, and since it had gone undiscovered for so long, was able to grow itself into the large temple we saw Churchill and Lucan exploring in the previous tapes. And what Lucan saw in the news report was a revenant dumping its spores into the water as a new way to infect whatever it can. This beta chunk also appears to be the source of AZ-001's central consciousness, which Churchill thinks collecting all of its knowledge and memories could be a way to put a stop to the Starkill/Admiral Nero, the thing they themselves technically created. Humanity always finds a way to make things worse, I tell ya.
Rapture. Rapture, and no, not the Bioshock location, opens with our Home Gamma Majestic logo. We are told we've finally gotten the resources to battle this alien invasion. How? Well, it's very simple. We have taken the memories of AZ-01 and formed an AI called the Digital Akashic Watcher Neurological System for Targeting Analysis and Response, otherwise known as the Dawnstar. Is this a Skyrim or a DC reference? Dawnstar, due to having the memories of Starkill, can think like it as well, because that can't possibly go wrong, can it? Dawnstar can also predict Starkill's actions with 99% accuracy, but if you're an XCOM player, that number is not very comforting. Dawnstar is going to be loaded onto a spaceship called the Ark. Now this is definitely a Sonic reference, or is it a Halo reference? Dawnstar is being launched in a few days, and the counterattack on this thing will occur on the 4th of July, the 2-year anniversary of what happened to Freddie Prinze Jr. that one fateful summer. The operation is known as Operation Rapture. June 28th sees the Ark launch with great success before we are greeted by the dossier of Commander Vindex. Side note, remember way back when I said in real history, Emperor Nero raised taxes which caused a rebellion? Well, the original leader of this rebellion was actually named Vindex. Vindex led the armies against the Roman Empire, but this army was defeated. This led to him committing suicide, but this was the catalyst for the downfall of Nero, as the soldiers who defeated Vindex were the first group to swear loyalty to their general over the emperor, leading to the eventual collapse of the empire.
We are taken to later in the night on June 28th, listening in on said conversation between Commander Vindex and Dawnstar. It sounds like all personnel are ready for this counterattack. According to Dawnstar, the orbital artillery will be fully ready by midnight, followed by the final scans of the Akashic plane. Thankfully, according to this all-knowing AI, projected deviation is only around 2.3%. I think I'd rather it be 0%, but let's take what we can get. The calculated combatant fatalities sits at 25, at least we're being honest. We even learned the calculated civilian fatalities, which is 450, which again, according to the AI, is within the acceptable range. How far is considered acceptable again? The commander then asks if Starkill is aware of the operation. Dawnstar tells us that Starkill is not aware at all, and I'm still having trouble processing why we would trust what is essentially a copy of Starkill to tell us the truth on what Starkill knows. Humanity knows what's best, I suppose. The commander then assures that Arc-Fleet will begin combat readiness preparation as soon as possible, before we cut to July 3rd, just a day before the operation. We take a look at all the areas set to be exterminated. First is the temple by the lake in Paradise and the surrounding neighborhood. Next is the Babel site, then followed by the Colosseum site, each one looking as infected as ever, and all being classified as temples. But that's not all, it turns out. AZ-001 itself is also listed as a target. Gotta hit the main source.
We cut to a menu showing all the players in this lobby are ready. The clock strikes midnight and Operation Rapture is a go. Orchestra music plays as we are greeted with a montage of numerous alien locations being obliterated. Hey, I've seen this one before. It's not enough, however, as we see Admiral Nero turn into Sauron. The screen flashes Nero on screen, keep that in mind, as it shows the main cannon is offline. Nero proceeds to give a TED talk about how conflict and how it pushes the evolution with our pilots giving it all they got. We see the Star Child show up for this crossover episode as they speak of how they know the past, present, and the future. Doing the Dragon Ball Z fusion thing, they grow even more powerful. Dawnstar begins talking in cohesion with these two as Dawnstar eventually shoots the whoop, decimating Nero below.
We end up seeing a brief segment with Dawnstar, seemingly projecting some kaleidoscope waves towards the frame. And I have a feeling we just created a new, stronger Starkill, exactly like we did when we thought of injecting Dr. Spencer with the cells. We essentially thought it would be a good idea to create an AI replicant of everything Starkill knew. Sounds like we gave it away to just escape death. Or the AI lied, and Operation Rapture was yet another fake event. However, we are met with a media report detailing the events of Operation Rapture. We read that on July 4th, the Starkill threat was officially declared to be 100% eradicated. Just like we did with Operation Homebound, right? And as to be expected, Home Gamma Majestic's Department of Press and Media began a cover-up campaign to hide the truth of the operation. I can only imagine what kind of tale they're able to spin up here. Our next segment takes us to Channel 15 news. However, right when we are about to get into the weather report I was dying to hear about, we get yet another emergency message. However, we quickly glitch out and are then taken to Channel 6, which shows us the story of a chemical explosion causing a large wildfire throughout Paradise, Missouri. Sounds like we know how they covered up that area's incident, but they have a few other locations that are going to need explaining. Sounds like the event actually happened, but how successful it is and how accurate this information is, I believe, is still up to some heavy questioning. We then see the emergency alert for said explosion, issuing an emergency evacuation towards Joplin, Missouri, and all the counties that this is in effect for.
We are shown the stats at this level, among them being a civilian death toll above 1,000 and an injury count of over 9,000. The entire operation, however, is being hidden from the public, much like certain files. We see the aftermath of the devastation and eventually see the damage was apparently within the acceptable limit, with reconstruction measures being enacted merely 3 days after the event. The post-credit scene shows Dawnstar one last time with a reminder that we are one nation under God. Well, seems like the day is saved, but for some reason I'm a bit skeptical. Remember when I told you to take note of Nero's name flashing under the screen? That's because underneath the name there is a line that says 98% match, and like I said, as an XCOM player, that number does not bring any certainty. I don't really have much evidence that Nero is alive, but that alone shows me there was probably some way this thing could have weaseled its way out of its justice. It already has before, technically, when we were hit with the reveal that the previous attack on it was all a ruse after all. We still have a few videos left though, so maybe there will be some kind of hints there.
Red Oak. If you thought things were complicated before, you're in for a wild ride. We are introduced to Red Oak Productions, and someone begins to tell us that around 1989 to 1990, production on a movie began, which is said to be about 5 years ago now, putting us at 1994 to 1995 at the time of this recording. We learn the man narrating was the special effects supervisor for the film, and in the background we see some very familiar set pieces that looks like our tapes. The man claims that the director paid the crew a hefty sum of cash and was met through a mutual friend at the church. He claims that the director had a super specific vision on what he wanted this movie to be, to the point where they ended up with 5 different cuts since there was just too much to fit into one movie. Unfortunately, it sounds like the movie didn't make any money, but since the director paid for everything out of pocket, the crew didn't really lose all that much. It's then said that, oddly enough, he left town right before the movie was released in 1991, never to be heard from again. It's also said that during production, the director and some of the team would go out to the church, assumed to be praying for the film's success in some way. The narrator tells us that in hindsight, the whole thing felt feverish and frantic. I mean, that's just any movie set. However, the last thing we see is a familiar message just telling us that we can't copy this film or else we get thrown in jail. But that leaves us with just one more tape. It isn't in any of the playlists, but I'm pretty sure that this is a canon entry.
Midwest Angelica movie teaser. Clocking in at less than a minute, this video shows fireworks with the Channel 15 logo before we are interrupted by blood splatter on a wall. Shortly after, we are interrupted again with a burning cross and then cut to Dawnstar flying amidst the flames. We see a newspaper report of a winged cryptid sighting. We are then shown a slightly open door before we see the title of Midwest Angelica, a Red Oak production in, well, Red Oak, Iowa. So this one doesn't offer much aside from cryptic imagery, but there is a couple things we can speculate. The winged cryptid bit is likely in reference to Marcus, as the last time we saw him, he went all Mothman and flew away. Considering there is no confirmed reports of his fate, it's likely he is still out there. The other image that's a bit intriguing is Dawnstar sitting amid the flames. It's possible this could be Earth because, well, it is an AI that is modeled after Starkill, but it's possible this could be another planet, but really this thing is on a timer to go Ultron mode. It's gonna happen sooner or later.
Scream and your entire staff dies.
The rest I can't exactly say with much certainty. That said, we still have more to come, so maybe we'll be given some answers in due time.
Did any of you think that Act 2 would give us some answers? Well, that would have been a silly thought because this again added to the pile of questions left heavily to interpretation. For instance, what exactly was that glowing figure that frequently visited our characters? And a question that has been still sitting in the back of my mind since the beginning of this series, where in the hell is Dr. Lucas Michaels? Now that I think of it, he and another person that was recently mentioned seem to have a bit of a lineup in terms of odd things occurring. Lucas Michaels is said to have mysteriously vanished in 1989. Coincidentally, the same year that this supposed Midwest Angelica film began production. And this isn't the first time the series has taken a fourth wall break in a sense and shown itself to be an actual movie. The very first tape, Call Now, shows us a teaser for said film. At first it was believed this just acted as a tease for the show to come, but it appears there may be something a lot deeper going on. We know now the movie definitely was finished before 1999. Which would be before any contact was made with the chunks of AZ-001 and Earth. Sure, our characters were aware of the presence of AZ-001 before it crash landed, but only one character was said to be having communication with it through dreamlike visions, Dr. Lucas Michaels. Is it crazy to say that Dr. Michaels utilized his visions given by AZ-001 to try and create a movie that warns humanity of its incoming fate? The director of the film did also skip town once the film released. And it did look like the Red Oak production studio got infiltrated and something truly horrific went down in there. And the big sign of the production logo set ablaze leaves me questioning what is the real world and what could possibly just be a part of a film. I have a feeling it's possible that it's both, considering in the description for the tape Rapture, it says that additional footage was required from blank for the sake of context and visual clarity. It's possible the movie is currently being used as a way to figure out what is currently happening, and we are being shown a mix of true footage and scenes from this film to make it easier to digest. It's hard to even wrap my brain around that concept now as I type this. This whole series loves to play on what is truth and what isn't, with total events being covered up, and characters not letting on the true extent of what they know.
It was really nice to come back to the franchise. It was already quite unique way back when we first took a look at it nearly a year ago, and it's only managed to get better. Previously, I had made complaints regarding the quality of some of its effect, but it seems like for the most part that's been resolved. In addition to this, it's clear that the writers have a clear vision in their head as that the connections to the Roman history persist and only serve to strengthen the storyline. Now that the Nero arc is over, it's possible they could continue to follow Roman history and face the year of the 4 emperors. Or they could even go in a completely different direction and decide to follow an entirely different era of history. Or they could just ditch that entirely. That's sort of the beauty of where we're all at right now. I can't exactly tell where we're headed next, which only makes me await the next installment even more.
Once again, Midwest Angelica completely blew me away. Its visuals, story, acting, just about everything that goes on is truly a breath of fresh air. By all means, this series deserves all the support it can get. The people behind it are even putting out a real VHS release for Act 1, which is really cool, and I definitely need to get my hands on it. Just need to find a VHS player. The series truly has one of the most expansive lores that I have seen in a long while, and if this is all Act 2 has to offer, then you bet I will be eagerly awaiting whatever Act 3 has in store for us. Hopefully answers, considering it sounds like Act 3 will be what ends us off.
Well, wasn't that just an exciting tale of conspiracy and cover-ups? We here at 4plus always love to have you all aboard for our adventures into worlds like these. Every video is made with love, and we cannot thank you all enough for your support. That said, I am Mr. Minus, signing off and handing the mic to Mr. Plus. Stay tuned as always, folks.
As always, if you haven't already, check out the original series. Check out their Patreon page and shop, as this series deserves all the attention it can get, as it's up there with some of the top tiers. And be sure to keep on leaving us recommendations down below, whether it be in the YouTube comments or the community Discord where assimilation has almost been complete. But if you'll excuse me, I have a certain urge to take a trip to Paradise, Missouri.